It's a nightmare. I'm sitting at my desk, staring at my screen, wondering what the hell I'm doing. I've been messing around, pretending I'm busy for hours, days, weeks maybe, who knows at this point. As a director in an agency, it's my responsibility to be on top of all my client accounts. But there are many of them, and honestly, I feel so overwhelmed that I haven't looked at some of these accounts for what frankly feels like months. My phone's eerily silent. I wonder if some of these clients quietly left for a competitor and I just haven't noticed yet. But I'm too scared to ask, because if I check with the big boss and she realizes how much I've spun out of control, I know it'll be game over. One of my team members catches my eye. Is that a whiff of disdain I'm picking up? Or is she having a bad day? Maybe I'm having a panic attack? A breakdown? It doesn't feel like it though. Yeah, I can't shake the feeling that I'm nothing more than a clown in a suit or a monkey in an office chair. I've no idea what I'm doing here, and any minute now, someone's about to figure me out. And when that happens, I know they'll escort me out of the building in no time. I've seen them do it to others. And then I wake up. Like I said, it's a nightmare, and a recurring one. Different desks each time, but always the same scenario playing out, where I realize I'm a huge disappointment to myself and everybody else, a feeling I then carry with me throughout the rest of the morning. You might well recognize this nagging anxiety that any minute now you'll be exposed as a fraud, as a clown. In fact, research shows that up to 81% of professionals regularly feel like they don't deserve their success, that they're frauds. Just think about that. At some point, almost every single successful individual that you admire believes that they were a fraud. It's heartbreaking. And this feeling is often referred to as the imposter phenomenon. It's not a diagnosable condition, so it doesn't have a strict definition. But broadly speaking, if you suffer from imposter phenomenon, it means you have no internal sense of your own success. And because of this lack of objective perspective, you assume that people are projecting positive qualities onto you that aren't really there. Worse, you don't believe they're doing it because they're stupid, you believe they're doing it because you are an awful person. Awful enough to deceive them into thinking that you know what you're doing. You also convince yourself it's only a matter of time before you'll be outed as not as bright, successful, or talented as they imagined you to be. And just like in my nightmares, you'll be out of the door in no time, clown suit and all. Who are all these imposters? There's some debate about whether imposter phenomenon is more prevalent in women than in men, but recent studies suggest it's pretty equal among all genders. It also doesn't appear to be affected by age or career progression. Indeed, many top executives report feeling more like imposters the higher up the career ladder they climb. That makes sense because the more accomplished and visible you become, the more likely you are to question how much of that success is actually deserved. As for the 19% of you who rarely or never experience imposter phenomenon, good for you. Studies show you're more likely to get promoted because, as I wrote in a previous article, people often conflate confidence with competence, which means that those who come across as self-assured are generally perceived as being better at their jobs than those who don't. But don't congratulate yourself just yet. Remember the Dunning-Kruger effect, which shows that incompetent people overestimate their competence because they don't know how much they don't know. Highly skilled people, on the other hand, often underestimate their abilities because they realize how much more there is to learn. They also wrongly assume that tasks that come easy to them must be easy for everyone else too. I point this out because maybe the actual frauds aren't the ones who think they are, but the ones who don't. The comparison curse. Your inner imposter thrives on comparison and overcompensation. Because of that, you may find yourself trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and exhaustion. It all starts with a pattern known as the imposter ratio, a cognitive trap where you compare your worst moments to someone else's best. In other words, you take everyone else's polished presentations, swift promotions, public successes, and then you use them as a weapon against yourself, measuring them against your insecurities, rejections, and professional missteps. It's like comparing your worst professional bloopers to someone else's Instagram highlight reel, or the clown suit you think you're wearing with everyone else's polished evening wear. I see imposter phenomenon showing up most commonly in environments that attract ambitious, talented, and high-achieving individuals, like academia, tech, leadership roles, creative industries. These are all spaces where the bar keeps rising, where you're constantly surrounded by brilliant people. The more impressive your peers are, the more likely you'll feel like the least qualified person in the room. High achievers often overcompensate for their feelings of inadequacy through relentless overwork, believing that if they just keep achieving more, their feelings of unworthiness might finally disappear. But here's a sad paradox. Greater success won't ease your fear of being exposed. It will amplify it. Indeed, plenty of leaders I coach tell me that the higher they climb, the more they fear falling. They might be in a senior leadership position, but instead of feeling like the ringmaster in control of the show, they convince themselves they're just a clown who happens to be stumbling through the act. And this leads to a so-called burnout loop, where self-doubt leads to overwork, overwork leads to exhaustion, exhaustion leads to mistake, and mistakes fuel even more self-doubt. And so the cycle continues. So here's a thought. Maybe you don't feel like an imposter because you're not good enough. Perhaps you feel like one because you're too burnt out to recognize how good you already are. Imposter phenomenon versus imposter syndrome. You may have noticed I haven't been using the term imposter syndrome. That's because through my research for this article, I've come to realize what a misnomer that is. First, it makes the whole thing sound like a medical condition, like it's your problem to fix, when really it's a learned response from growing up in competitive environments, perfectionist cultures, and often under relentless expectations. Even the word imposter feels loaded, almost like you're some kind of criminal. But feeling like a fraud isn't a crime. It's a symptom of a system that wasn't built for everyone. Here's an example. Look at any list of famous people who claim to have suffered from imposter phenomenon. Notice anything interesting? Most will be women, and nearly half will be women of color. And that's not a coincidence, because it exposes a straight white male elephant in the room. People from underrepresented identities experience imposter feelings more often. Women and minorities constantly feel the need to manage how others perceive them for fear of being stereotyped. Or first-generation white-collar workers doubting themselves because they weren't raised with the same networks, norms, or professional cues as their peers. Or LGBTQ+ professionals experiencing double imposter syndrome, having to prove their skills while also navigating the complexities of what we call passing or concealing their identity in spaces that increasingly feel less inclusive. When you don't see people like you in leadership, it's easy to feel like you don't belong, like you're a fraud. That's why, as author Jodi Amburi points out, the issue isn't about fixing individuals, it's about fixing the biased workplaces and cultures that create these feelings in the first place. And by telling ourselves that our imposter feelings simply are a me problem, we might just be gaslighting ourselves. What can you do about it? Even though imposter phenomenon is largely systemic, that doesn't mean you're powerless. I'm not absolving you of responsibility to work on it because you're not helpless. Here are 4 valuable strategies you can apply whenever you feel overshadowed by the imposter. Strategy number 1. Separate facts from feelings. It's easy to confuse feelings with facts when the imposter phenomenon hits. But you must remember that while all feelings are valid, not all are accurate. You might feel like you don't belong or feel underqualified, but those feelings thrive on emotion, not evidence. So when self-doubt creeps in, pause and ask yourself, what's the truth here? Separate what you feel from what you know. For example, the feeling might be, I'm not experienced enough. But the fact is, you've solved tough problems, you've led projects, you've earned trust from your peers. Or the feeling might be, I'm not experienced enough. The fact is, you've solved tough problems, you've led projects, you've earned the trust of your peers. Or the feeling is, everyone else has it together. The fact is, you're only seeing their successes, not their struggles. So here's a crucial step. Be precise with the language and evidence that you use. You can't just say, I'm good at my job. You need to spell out why you're good at your job. For example, I delivered X project ahead of schedule. Or I got positive feedback from my manager last week. on XYZ. Your brain responds much better to specific, concrete proof than vague affirmations. In last month's newsletter, I talked about creating a brag folder, which is a collection of all your previous successes in your current and previous roles. This will help you generate internal validation for everything you've achieved and the competencies you've built over the years in different areas. And I know it sounds silly, a brag folder, but it's a really great way to strengthen your professional identity, both in and outside of your meetings. So, next time self-doubt plays up and tells you don't belong, don't argue with it, fact check it. Strategy number 2, add some moxie. The word moxie comes from a 19th century tonic drink, Moxie Nerve Food. I looked it up. It was good for exhaustion, nervousness, and softening of the brain, whatever that means. Over the years, moxie has come to mean grit, guts, and an ability to keep moving forward despite your fear. It's a rather American term, but at least it sounds a little bit better than the UK equivalent, spunk. This brings me to an article by Arthur Keith Dorsey in Harvard Business Review, where he prescribes moxie as an excellent antidote for imposter syndrome. Not the drink that is, but the attitude. So how do you act with moxie when those imposter feelings creep in? Remember, moxie is about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, even if you're scared. It's about understanding that confidence follows action, not the other way around. So you can't sit around waiting until you feel ready. It's also about recognizing that the systemic barriers I mentioned earlier are real, but you can use them as fuel to push yourself forward rather than as an excuse to stay put. Yes, prove those biased idiots wrong. Or as Dorsey puts it, belonging isn't something you wait for, it's something you claim. Strategy number 3, put your alter egos to work. What about fake it till you make it? Well, believe it or not, I'm kind of a fan, though I prefer calling it the alter ego. I know what you're thinking, but Chris, I just want to be my authentic self, not some fake version of me. But here's the thing, you already have multiple versions of you. You have your underlying self, which is the one that people closest to you get to see. There's your everyday self, which is the version you bring to work and the rest of the world gets to see. You have your overextended self, which is the one that emerges when you're under pressure. And while I'm at it, why not add your inner clown self here too? This is your playful self, the one that is happily learning the ropes and doesn't mind looking silly. Each version is still authentically you. The difference? You're simply dialing certain personality traits up or down, depending on the moment. That's not being inauthentic, that's being adaptable. Authenticity isn't about showing up as the exact same version of you in every situation, God forbid. It's about choosing which authentic version you show up as. Choosing who you present yourself as isn't fake, it's a skill. And it's a skill that separates your grown-up self from your 8-year-old. So, next time you feel your imposterness coming up, ask yourself, who is the version of me that can handle this moment? Maybe create an alter ego for yourself, your own personal Sasha Fierce Sarah, or fearless email master John, or the one that I'm trying to channel here, late night show host Chris. Invent whoever you want. Just pick a version of yourself you can lean into and borrow from. Ask yourself, what would they do? How might they react in this situation? And step into their shoes, activate your courage, curiosity, confidence, whatever quality the situation requires. Strategy number 4, use language to your advantage. Your brain will believe anything you want, so how you talk to yourself matters massively. That's why reframing is such a powerful tool for beating some of those imposter feelings. A reframe is a mental shortcut that offers you a different, better perspective. It helps you see your situation through a more useful lens, but without denying reality. For example, instead of saying, I can't, you'd say, I can't yet. Or I failed becomes I learned. And then notice how your energy shifts. You're not lying to yourself here. You're just choosing a different perspective, one that's both true and helpful. Here are some classic imposter stories that we tell ourselves and some reframes that have helped me over the years. Number 1, I have no idea what I'm doing in this new role. A reframe would be, I'm new to this level and I'm still learning how to navigate it. Or, number 2, I landed this big client because I happened to be in the right place at the right time. A reframe, positive reframe here would be maybe luck opened the door, but it's my skills, my effort, and my persistence that have kept me here. Number 3, I don't have enough experience to take on this leadership position. The reframe would be here, no one ever feels fully ready. Everyone is constantly figuring it out as they go. Number 4, my colleagues seem so confident in meetings while I'm the one second guessing everything I say. Reframe here would be is that you've no idea how much of an imposter they might be feeling right now. Number 5, everyone in this meeting is way more senior than me. A reframe here is, if I've been invited to this table, it means I belong to be at this table. Number 6, if I don't have an immediate answer to their questions, they'll think I'm incompetent. A reframe here would be, saying I don't know but I'll find out will build more trust than me bluffing. So pick 2 or 3 that feel most relevant to you, write them on a post-it, use them as mantras whenever necessary. In conclusion, we're all faking it. My friends, it's all right to feel like an imposter. I'd be more worried if you didn't, because that would mean you're either deluded or you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And here's the funny part. All those people you admire, they're winging it half the time. They might look like the circus ringleader, but underneath they feel like Bozo the Clown. Indeed, every job, every industry expert, they're all learning on the fly. But what many of them have taught themselves over time is to get better at feeling both like an imposter and still be highly competent. There's no paradox here. They've learned that self-doubt doesn't make them less capable. It just makes them more self-aware. It makes them more humble. The secret to handling your inner imposter is therefore not about having all the answers. It's about getting comfortable figuring things out as you go along. That is the very definition of confidence. And let me leave you with one final reframe here. What if you looked at work as nothing more than a real-life circus with better lighting and free donuts on Friday? Just put on your best clown suit, strut in like you own the place, toss some confetti around, and keep pulling those rabbits out of your hat. Hey, it's Chris here. If this resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else who needs to hear it. And if you want more insights on leadership, confidence, and growth, you can hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you soon.